Manca meno di un minuto, tra poco sarete collegati con il Theater di Esri Italia a Roma per lo speciale Esri User Conference J Creating Sustainable Future. Siamo in diretta dall'Italia per la cronaca della prima giornata della conferenza di Los Angeles nella prestigiosa sede Esri di Redland. Sentiremo in apertura il presidente di Esri, J.Dangermond, parlarci di un futuro che è già cominciato. Entrate in connessione, tra pochi secondi si parte.
Benvenuti allo speciale Esri User Conference 2021 in diretta dal nostro theater in via Casilina, 2 giornate live il 13 e 14 luglio dalle 10 alle 12 in cui vivremo e commenteremo insieme a tutti voi, la nostra community, i momenti salienti della EsriUC 2021. Ma iniziamo subito questa prima giornata. Insieme a noi, ad accompagnarci in questa prima tappa, si alterneranno sul palco Emilio Misuriello, AD di Esri Italia, ed Emilio Albertario, direttore di The Science Aware Magazine. Con loro 2 ospiti in collegamento, Massimiliano Pulice, CEO di Arcadis Italia, e Roberto Rofino, direttore di Ersaf, per parlare di 2 user case di Esri, la prima dedicata a real time e digital twin e la seconda dedicata alla gestione delle foreste. Spazio naturalmente anche alle novità della tecnologia Esri, che avremo modo di approfondire insieme a Michele Ieradi, Solutions Director di Esri Italia, e a tutto lo staff tecnico di Esri Italia. E per finire, insieme a Lorenzo Donghia, Vice President Business Development di Esri Italia, con Marco Brancati, Innovation and Technological Governance di Telespazio, commenteremo la user case della NASA Landing on Mars. Ma entriamo subito nel vivo e iniziamo con l'evento J Creating a Sustainable Future.
It's all happened here. Everything we've ever known, done, loved, took place on this drifting, spinning ball that's our home. It's where we learned to provide, nurture, protect, thrive. And yet,
wildfires are scorching the West Coast, leaving behind a path of death and destruction.
15 inches of rain this morning.
The waters keep rising, and according to the National Weather Service,
our very success now threatens our future. Today, our greatest challenge is to learn how to grow while sustaining what sustains us. Your understanding, your science, your work are the solution. You have the power to see patterns and relationships and show us how everything and everyone are connected. You have the power to transform how we produce and consume, build and maintain, unite and strengthen, heal and nurture. You can help us see that we can no longer live apart from nature, but must live as part of it. Today, geography matters more than ever. The geographic approach, your work, and the billions of maps you make are essential for creating a more sustainable future.
Buongiorno, benvenuti nel futuro, benvenuti nella geografia digitale. Accanto a me l'amministratore delegato di Esri Italia, Emilio Misuriello. Subito, Emilio, entriamo nel vivo di questo nostro incontro che durerà per 2 giorni, 2 ore, per verificare tutto ciò che di nuovo ci arriva dal di là dell'oceano, dalla nostra madre, casa madre Esri. E cosa c'è di meglio, Emilio, se non sentire il Presidente che parlerà di qualcosa di molto importante. La parola d'ordine sarà sostenibilità.
Sì, creare un pianeta, un futuro sostenibile è il tema di questa conferenza, è un tema che ci è molto vicino. Se pensiamo che questo ultimo governo ha creato un ministero della transizione ecologica, ci dà l'idea di come siamo sulla strada giusta per cercare di modificare i nostri comportamenti e arrivare veramente a un futuro sostenibile.
Ecco, noi parliamo di Ministero, di transizione, perché abbiamo da occupare tanto denaro che ci viene dall'Europa col PNRR italiano che è declinato il Recovery Plan. Che cosa lega questa idea e questi progetti che vengono dagli Stati Uniti, da Redland, dalla Esri, a quello che in realtà possiamo fare qui in Italia?
Beh, sicuramente la tecnologia svolgerà un ruolo importantissimo per creare un pianeta sostenibile e non si può pensare di farlo senza l'ausilio della tecnologia. Nel discorso che poi terrà, la presentazione che farà J.Dangermond, verrà sottolineato come la geografia e come la tecnologia è fondamentale per creare e arrivare veramente a un futuro sostenibile.
Molti saranno i piani applicativi, gli ambiti applicativi di cui sentirete parlare direttamente dalla voce di J.Dangermond. Vogliamo cominciare con la prima parte che abbiamo selezionato del suo intervento?
Assolutamente, diamone il via.
Good morning, everybody. My name is J.Dangermond, and it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you from around the world to the, 2021 International Esri Users Conference. The purpose of this meeting is quite simple. It's to help you in your career, for us to share the technology that we're advancing, but also an opportunity for you to share the work that you're doing and give us feedback. This year, in addition to all of the activities that are underway, we're also going to be focusing on creating a more sustainable future for our planet. The work that you are doing is, from my perspective, just extraordinary. For the last month, you've been sending me maps and examples of your work, and you sent thousands. And by the way, I wanted to say thank you very much. I've been combing through it and studying it. I'm almost overwhelmed by the breadth and the magnitude of your work, addressing virtually every big issue that our world is facing, from energy to environment to climate change to modernizing cities and so on. Each year at the beginning of this conference, we pick just a few of those and show them and showcase them, and I'm going to do that right now. Here's some examples of your work in environmental monitoring and assessment. And wow, I'm just saying there's hundreds of submissions on this year's presentation, but look at the one in the upper left, the good work of the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation, mapping biodiversity for the planet. Some of you are working on looking at the footprint of humans, like up in Canada in Ottawa, and others are monitoring things like sea ice, they're tracking fish movements, they're looking at water quality, and thousands of other activities related. These examples show your work in natural resource management, ranging from sustainable farming in Brazil to looking for suitable farming in the Navajo Nation. In forestry, almost every modern forest organization uses GIS in one way or the other. But I'm charmed by the little slide in the lower right showing field-based forestry management activities for small foresters in Germany. lots of work in conservation. I'm very pleased to say that this is some of the most important work that we must do. Planning, managing, understanding. In the center, we see the analysis, the science analysis of elephant range patterns and the human-elephant conflicts. In the upper left, some of the great work going on for green infrastructure planning in the Po River hydrological basin in northern Italy. And on the right, you can see the management of ecosystems, like at the Archibald Biological Station, using fire, a natural system, to better manage ecosystems, change and growth. Some of you are using GIS to manage land information, land records. Let's call them parcels. And these are kind of a foundation, in my view, for so much of our civil society. But it's not just managing the boundaries, doing the system of record that is shown here. It's the application of those records, integrating it with other layers like soils and floodplains to do more rational assessments, property assessments. And look at the one on the far right. This was done by the Dutch cadastre working in Colombia to have a fit-for-purpose configuration of the collector technology for field surveying of cadastral data. Many of you are working in urban design and planning, creating a future in our cities. And here, again, I'm so anxious to share these with you. In the far right, we see Berlin and Brandenburg region really working on creating a sustainable urban footprint. And this is some of the best work going on in the world, frankly. Others are updating urban plans, like the city of Paris in the lower right here, and just visualizing what's going on, creating new patterns of development, doing it in such a way that it is sustainable and administratively correct. GIS is continuing to evolve, and over the years I've watched it in this evolution. One of the big steps that has been made in the last few years is the movement into buildings and facilities. Its integration with BIM has meant that a whole new class of applications are emerging, from space management and fighting fires and indoor response. For example, this great work in Kuwait by the fire department. And look at the upper right-hand corner. This is CERN. CERN is the large European research center where the nuclear accelerator lives. And they have actually moved to a state of managing all their workspaces on the entire campus using GIS as a framework. GIS originated in many places, and one of them was in transportation with advanced modeling, trying to predict movement of people. In the lower right, you'll see in Jakarta the application of origin-destination modeling to predict ridership in buses and other vehicles. And in the far left, you'll see the application of GIS to optimize bus routes and also pick the right locations using operations research tools for stops. Many of you have traveled through the San Francisco airport before, and that entire complex is now managed with GIS, including all the rooms and walking times from gate to gate and so on. But speaking about time, the upper left-hand slide is interesting because it shows real-time traffic monitoring. Increasingly, this is a pattern going on in various regional and national agencies showing real-time geography. Engineering and public works management organizations are embracing the power of GIS to do their applications at many scales. I'd like to draw here your attention to the map in the center by Tetra Tech, which is a pipeline, showing a pipeline across Pennsylvania being constructed. What they applied is the web map pattern, and associated with those web maps, all the different construction status activities during construction. It was kind of a living construction manifest. In the lower left, I like this green map because it's showing the targeting of where infrastructure investments should be made. This is a very relevant topic for all of us these days. And again, one of my favorites in this collection is up in the upper right in Switzerland, looking underneath the ground at pipelines, not the exact location, but the approximate location, which is helping excavate and understand the grid underground. Water and wastewater management agencies around the world are using GIS for asset management, things like being able to support service orders or manage inspections. Look at the one on the left. It's looking at the analytics. It's making a map showing age of the network, analyzing again where investments should be made. But here, my favorite is up in the upper right. It's showing not a real time, but looking over the last quarter at sewer conditions and how they changed almost at a glance. In other words, summarizing all of the asset information and its management. Utility energies, electricity and gas, are likewise using GIS for traditional applications like asset management and vegetation management, and increasingly for outage management, like this interesting map in the center showing the outage of the Colonial Pipeline gas network in the southeast as a result of the cyber terrorism activities. But in almost every utility that I'm talking with these days, they're moving over to renewable energy. They're hunting for the right locations for solar and for wind production and applying GIS to manage their farms in a whole new way. Similarly, in telecommunications, both traditional networks, wireline or 4G, is being managed extensively with GIS, but also the next generation of telecommunication, 5G, like this beautiful example in Sydney showing siting of tower to support using viewshed, pick the right location for these towers. And in Albuquerque, they're doing network planning. And our national government here in the US is using it to assess and model the coverage of broadband for the entire country. This is a very important topic because it identifies those areas where we have the potential of a digital divide, those populations that are being left behind because they're not connected to the web with powerful enough network.
Siamo di nuovo in studio perché abbiamo sentito questa serie di piani applicativi, di questi ambiti, chiamiamoli ambiti, che ha fornito in maniera così semplice, con il suo inglese molto comprensibile, il patron di Esri, che non vuole essere chiamato uno dei 4 cavalieri dell'Apocalisse insieme a Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg o Elon Musk piuttosto che Jeff Bezos, ma è uno dei 5 grandi del mondo per quanto riguarda la visione. Siamo fortunati di averlo in diretta, anche se registrata con noi, per parlare di questo mondo che cambia continuamente e dagli Stati Uniti ce ne arrivano di informazioni. Però adesso il tema e l'ambito, perché parliamo di ambito, che tra poco affronterà, sarà quello della sicurezza.
Sì, e torniamo ancora un attimo su quello che ha detto Jack, perché Jack ci ha dato una visione dei vari ambiti applicativi, ma ci ha dato una visione che attraversa tutto il mondo. Ci ha fatto vedere esempi che vanno dalla Svizzera all'Italia, alla Germania, agli Stati Uniti, al Perù, mostrandoci come questa tecnologia è fondamentale per la gestione e la pianificazione dei dati del territorio, e noi vivendo sul territorio abbiamo bisogno di queste informazioni. Adesso facciamo un passo in più. Parleremo di sicurezza, e per arrivare al tema che ci sta affliggendo da parecchi mesi, che è quello del Covid, che anche quello col tracciamento ha bisogno di questa tecnologia.
Allora segnatevi queste keywords che sono ambiente, territorio, tecnologia, ma adesso sentite parlare di sicurezza, di tracciamento, di sicurezza anche della nostra salute. Sempre Jack.
Our cities, our countries, our nation, our world is safer because of GIS. In the law enforcement areas, they are looking at past historic crime rates to see pattern and allocate resources accordingly. They're also increasingly looking at real-time information, doing crime monitoring. They're looking at everything from school threats in local geographies all the way to monitoring our global security risk. And EMS organizations and fire organizations are not only picking the right locations for their facilities, like based on drive times, but they're also addressing major and significant issues like the opioid crisis here in the United States, being able to respond more effectively. In the field of disaster preparedness and response, likewise, GIS has had a long history. These examples show some of the modern stuff that's going on. I'm fond of this one in the Congo done by Kokusai Kogyo, looking at ground deformation near a volcano. But whether it's fire real-time or fire assessments of risk, or doing damage assessments, and in flooding and in severe weather, GIS is playing a very significant and major force. Now, the lower right shows, again, Kokusai Kogyo in Japan simulating the Fukushima earthquake that had happened a few years ago. And in this simulation, they're developing methods to be able to apply very quickly what might happen in other places in Japan and around the world. In 2020, the US Census carried out their centennial count of population. And GIS was central for this, not simply in making the maps, which are shown here, but also in actually structuring and running the census. It's based on geography, of course. And they were able to maintain with dashboards the completeness of their count as they carried it out. Now that the census is done, America is doing redistricting, which are political redistricts for congressional members. And GIS is again playing a significant role. I'll call your attention here to the map on the far right and the lower, which is illustrating population migration to Libya from across Africa. Libya is kind of a gateway into Europe for migrants, and these maps are quite extraordinary. Your work in social equity, particularly in the last year, is striking. You are studying the lingering effects of redlining, or de facto redlining still existing in Detroit. You're looking at accessibility, for example, accessibility to health facilities, or the relationship between poverty and access to legal resources, or in your planning work, looking at trails and equity planning and park accessibility relative to equity, creating understanding and creating what I see in the future, a more equitably and balanced population. COVID has affected nearly all of us. And last week, we passed this mark of 4 million people on the planet have died as a result of this horrible disease. Your work has contributed here because it's shown the world what's going on. The great work by Johns Hopkins University keeps track even today and has made over 2 trillion maps. Not only are we better informed of what the status is, but as the interesting visualization in the center shows, we've been able to look at patterns. This is showing the dynamics of what happened in Central Europe, or Europe, during the winter months during the disease. And your applications in site selection for vaccination, or return to office management, or even look at the interesting map in Liberia where they mapped in great detail every case and set up quarantine zones to shut the pandemic down, and it worked. GIS continues to grow and be hugely beneficial in both business analysis and economic development. These examples show it. Optimizing delivery routes, cutting carbon. Picking the right locations to avoid multi-hazard insurance, like in Japan. Picking the right sites, picking the right territories. All of these are very powerful, not just in business, but increasingly being used in government to target economic development sectors of various type.
Eccoci tornati negli studi di Via Casilina, al theater di Esri. Abbiamo sentito la visione, abbiamo sentito parlare di aspetti applicativi, di ambiti applicativi delle tecnologie GIS, ma di tutte le altre idee che vengono messe a terra, come diciamo noi in Italia, dagli tecnici, dagli studiosi di Esri nella sede di Los Angeles a Redland. A questo punto però dobbiamo spiegare il perché della Esri User Conference annuale. È un'occasione soprattutto per esaminare progetti, ce ne sono stati ben 3.500 quest'anno sotto la lente di ingrandimento, ma tutti continuamente sotto l'unica egida della parola chiave, questa è la keywords principale, la sostenibilità. E abbiamo anche qualcosa che parla italiano, siamo ancora reduci dalla sbornia degli europei, ma anche qui una coppa l'abbiamo vinta, vero Emilio?
Sì, anche quest'anno tra i progetti, tra i 3.500 progetti presentati a questo gruppo che in America poi fa le valutazioni, è stato premiato un premio, un'azienda, un progetto fatto in Italia. L'azienda premiata e il progetto premiato è legato a una grande impresa italiana che è A2A. Tra l'altro nella nostra conferenza abbiamo avuto modo di parlare con l'amministratore delegato, con Renato Mazzoncini, e abbiamo trattato i temi delle energie rinnovabili e dell'economia circolare, che sono temi molto sensibili per A2A e dove A2A ha deciso di investire. E noi, quando abbiamo avuto modo di confrontarci con il gruppo degli Stati Uniti e abbiamo segnalato questo progetto, loro hanno sposato l'idea e hanno premiato A2A per quello che hanno fatto e che faranno. È importante questa conferenza perché è importante quello che Jack fa per la nostra community, no? Che va oltre il rapporto cliente-utente, ma è una community, quindi è un punto dove riusciamo a condividere queste idee.
Ecco, era bello anche quando intervenne alla nostra conferenza e con il contributo che diede alla nostra rivista, il titolo fu, glielo rubammo da quello che ci aveva scritto per così augurare buon lavoro alla conferenza di Esri Italia. Bene Esri Italia, andate avanti, siamo una community. Quindi il tema del collettivo, che non è solo il collettivo calcistico delle squadre che andranno adesso alle Olimpiadi. Ecco, perché batte sul collettivo J.Dangermond e poi dopo ci prepariamo alla prima transizione perché si devono preparare coloro che ci seguiranno.
Ma il tema della sostenibilità è un tema che ci tocca tutti quanti, quindi è un tema che poi, su cui ribatte Jack dicendo che tutti dobbiamo fare qualcosa, un pezzo lo dobbiamo dedicare a creare un mondo e un futuro migliore. Quindi il ritorno che fa Jack sul tema che è possibile avere un futuro sostenibile lo possiamo fare col contributo di tutti, col contributo della nostra community, ma col contributo di tutte le persone.
Allora, chi meglio di Jack può spiegarci questo senso del collettivo? Prego la regia di mandare questo contributo.
Each year, we select out of our 350,000 customers around the world, a small group of people, less than 150, to receive what we call a Special Achievement in GIS Award, or a SAG Award. These are the ones that were selected this year in the United States, and these are the ones that were selected around the world. These organizations distinguish themselves by really doing fantastic things. They organized all the data. They built the right applications. They organized the right institutional settings for their work. And normally, I would have them all stand up if we were all together in an audience and we could acknowledge them in the right way. I won't be able to do that obviously today, but I do want to send a warm message to all of you in these organizations, how very proud I am of your work, but also just you should feel very proud and special for doing the kinds of things you're doing. Today, our world is being challenged because us as humans are living recklessly and unsustainably. And this is threatening our future. Human-induced climate changes and overpopulation are resulting in interconnected patterns of change, steep declines in biodiversity, and many other factors. We read about them, scientists tell us about them almost every day. Clearly, for me, personally, for me, it speaks that we collectively, we as a general human population, but also we as GIS users, are collectively responsible for its future. And it could go many ways. Creating a sustainable future, which I believe is possible, will require that we dramatically change our priorities. I believe in this strongly about making a major commitment to life and our future. And we must act now in order to achieve this. There are many things to do, like restoring nature, improving business efficiencies, reducing pollution, consuming less, implementing sustainable land use patterns, and many, many more. Applying our best science and our best technology and our best creative thinking will clearly be necessary. And I can't help but think and know that geographic thinking is going to be essential in this. Sustainability requires that we see the world as one single ecosystem.
Allora, Emilio Misoriello, quello che mi ha colpito, questa frase finale, creare un futuro sostenibile è possibile, e lo credi anche tu, non è che ti voglio dire di smentire Jack, ma questo è il futuro sostenibile è dietro l'angolo?
Sì, è dietro l'angolo ed è già una partita che già è iniziata. Dobbiamo adesso rincorrere il clima, i cambiamenti climatici, dobbiamo rincorrere una maggiore sostenibilità, però ce la possiamo fare. Diciamo che la nostra community è dedicata a questo.
Ecco, quindi passiamo alle applicazioni, sentiamo quello che fa Esri e Italia in questo settore e come ci connettiamo con il messaggio che ci ha dato poco fa e abbiamo sentito da J.Dangermond, presidente di Esri.